Welcome to the Curious About Nature podcast. This is a podcast for folks who want to connect with nature and rewild childhood. Hosted by Rachel Mills, Buttercup Learning's founder, an educator with 20 plus years of experience with a passion for animation, the natural world and conservation. Rachel focuses on getting digital kids outdoors and having fun in nature, promoting well-being and a can-do attitude to local wildlife conservation and sustainable living. Join her and her guests for their stories, experiences, and tips to support outdoor learning and nature connection.
Welcome to the Curious About Nature podcast. This month I'm joined by Nicole Bateman, a SEN consultant passionate about advocating for children's emotional and sensory needs to be met so they can thrive. Nicole offers training packages, courses, digital resources, and a fantastic podcast. Hi there, Nicole.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a real pleasure. I'm really looking forward to our conversation this morning. Before we get into it, I'd love to know a little bit about you for our audience listening. Tell us a little bit about your background.
So I am a teacher by background. I left 3 years ago after my autistic son was diagnosed with epilepsy. I really love supporting kids and especially looking at the whole child. So when I left, I started creating resources to help my son express his emotions because he found that a little bit tricky. So I started my first business, A Box Full of Joy, creating resources and then also helping people through exam stress, because I saw a lot of the time the amount of pressure that was put on children to make them think that exams are be all and end all. And I just wanted to help kids understand that they are important, however, they're not everything, and that their worth is not tied to their exams. So I did that, helping my son and also creating resources for other children, did some mentoring. And then I partnered up with an occupational therapist to start the Super Sensory Squad. We've got 8 penguins that help kids understand their sensory systems, help with regulation strategies, and also helping parents advocate to a school, because I've been on my own personal journey over the last few years trying to advocate to get my son his EHCP, get the support, get the different diagnoses. And yeah, it's been a journey. So it's combining personal lived experience as well as different professional viewpoints to try and help parents, and which is why I started my podcast, Conversations with a SEND Mum, to just help people feel like they're less alone in that journey, because it is a struggle sometimes to get the support that your child needs.
Yeah, and I know from personal experience, my daughter has sensory processing differences and has really struggled to express what she needs. But that's actually been changing, and that's because of doing Super Sensory Squad, actually. And it's really great to see her sort of developing confidence to talk about those differences and her specific needs as well.
That makes me so happy to hear that, because that's the point. If the kids can understand themselves, their brains, understand their sensory preferences and what triggers them, then they can advocate to be like, actually, yeah, I like touching fluffy things, that helps me regulate, or I like smelling this, or this is, and they can advocate. So I love hearing that about your daughter. Thank you.
I love the impetus for how you got started with Box Full of Joy, because obviously you've got 2 businesses with Box Full of Joy and Super Sensory Squad. I'm curious about how are you developing the 2 side by side, really? Or are you at a point now where you've got such a great range of products that's supporting children's well-being and mental health through the stuff that you've done through Box Full of Joy?
Yeah, definitely. I think as you evolve, like when you leave teaching, you think, oh, I'm a teacher. What else can I do? But actually, the amount of skills that you just learn being a business owner, you'll know too. You learn things. You're like, actually, I said, let's start a podcast. And then 3 weeks later, it was launched. And yesterday, in July, I finished the season 2 of the podcast. So it's also something that I want to instill in children, that actually, when you put your mind to it, you may not know the things, but you can learn so much, and you can actually do whatever you want to do, especially if you're fueled by that passion and that mission. So I think we evolve and we adapt things to suit. At the start, it was the kind of emotional needs, trying to get him to express how he was feeling, my son, was the initial thing. And everything is for my children, basically. It all stems from trying to help them and then trying to help others. So at the moment, my big focus is with the Supersensory Squad, and then conversations with an SEND mum and that advocacy part. But having those resources, like my book, My Child Has Exams Now What, that's always there. There's courses and there's support there through A Box Full of Joy that people can do. But the main focus is trying to put those kind of sensory regulation needs first, because actually looking at the pyramid of learning, sensory needs and that sensory safety is even before that emotional needs. So actually the Supersensory Squad is that basis, which then will help with emotional regulation, which will then be able to help kids actually engage in those cognitive things and learning. Because if kids aren't if they are not regulated sensory wise and emotionally wise, they're not going to be able to actually access learning in the classroom or anything else.
I'm curious because I know in your blog that you write a lot about improving children's resilience and that kind of awareness as well of their specific kind of needs. Have you got any tips around that or any thoughts on that you'd like to share?
I think for kids, it's ensuring they feel safe and secure in an environment, because if they don't feel the sense of safety, then they're not going to be able to build up that resilience, etc. I definitely do not agree with trying to put them in situations that are uncomfortable for them to build that. I think it's more about ensuring that their needs are met so that they can then access and they can live their daily life, etc. So I think we start at the bottom. It's like a bottom-up approach with building that resilience. First of all, meeting sensory needs, meeting emotional needs, and then they'll be able to access daily tasks.
How could, as a parent, might I start to understand if my child experiences sensory processing differences?
Different people have very different sensory profiles, and there are some things, for example, that are more apparent. Children who struggle with their hair washing, hair brushing, if they don't want to be hugged, all of those things may indicate that they are tactile sensitive. Others, like my son, he seeks that tactile and the proprioceptive, which is that like really push, pull and carry, that muscle feedback, tight hugs, weighted blankets, all of those things is what he loves. You may see a child that's quite rough with their play. They may not be able to, if they're seeking that proprioceptive input, you may see them do lots of wrestling or pushing around or just trying to jump into things. All of those things, they're seeking that input. Kids who find it tricky to sit still, for example, at dinner time, they may be seeking that movement, that vestibular input. We've got Rolly, our penguin, that has like a little hula hoop. So it's thinking about, okay, how can you help them to get that movement input, that vestibular input that they're seeking, but also be able to access daily tasks. There's some like wobble cushions that are helpful because then they get that movement while sitting there. For us, we have exercise bands on the bottom of chairs to get that proprioceptive and vestibular movement from that. So some might be seeking a lot of sensory input. Some might be avoiding it. For example, if they come in when you're cooking, if they come into the room, they're like, oh, this stinks, like a lot. Obviously, people will say that, but if it's overly sensitive to smell, noise, in classrooms, a lot of background noise that may be too overwhelming for some kids. Everyone has sensory needs, but we don't all have the sensory processing differences. There's different ways our brains work and physical differences in how we interpret sensory input from the environment. If it impacts daily tasks and daily life, that's when you should be investigating how to best support them.
Yeah, my family found that the Supersensory Squad is helpful in lots of ways. It's opened up discussion about our own unique preferences. It's helped us relate better to one another, actually. And it's helped my daughter understand her particular preferences and what overwhelms her when that tends to happen. It's really helped to discuss that with her school teachers, actually, which is great. And she's finally able to explain to them and us her sensory challenges and work with the teachers and us to find ways to help her put in place things that can support her, but help her to regulate as well. Could you tell us a little bit more about your Supersensory Squad and the materials that parents can access in the course?
Yeah, absolutely. So we really wanted that two-part of helping parents understand, but also, like with your daughter, helping children understand for themselves, because obviously, depending on the age range, it's mainly for primary school and then lower secondary school age. Parents have watched it, or people have watched it and be like, this is so helpful for me as an adult. So to be fair, the Supersensory Squad, I think, is for everyone, and who doesn't love penguins? The people watching it, like you said, we listen and understand about ourselves and our own preferences. It's like a family thing. We have videos for parents about each of the 8 sensory systems, and then we also have stories about each of the penguins going around Sensory Island and exploring the sensory school or the joyful jungle or different places. The stories generally about kind of them doing their daily life, then getting a bit dysregulated, then thinking, okay, what strategies can help to regulate again, and the rest of the penguins help them. So that's the kind of the way that the stories go. And then there's also videos and workbooks for kids to understand. Each penguin has a key question, so that we don't have to say to the kids, oh, you're seeking proprioceptive input, because they'll be like, what? Flex is our penguin that links to the proprioception, and her question, she's holding weights, and her question is, what can you push, pull and carry? So my son, for example, he's always, I'm carrying things like Flex, or I want to be like Flex, mummy. And so therefore we do those kind of push, pull and carry exercises, and or have those big deep pressure hugs and all of those things. So it helps equip kids. My kids are younger than your daughter, so my kids are 5 and 8. And even from when my daughter was 4, when we first started, she very quickly says, oh, I'm a bit like Buzz, or because she seeks that tactile input. But Solly, he's a Romy, because he always leads, even with food, he smells it first, right? So he's got a really strong sense of smell. So sometimes smells do overwhelm him. They can pick and they can be like, oh, I'm like this penguin, or I'm a bit like this penguin, or I want to do this. So it's just a fun way to engage them in understanding about themselves. It's a big win, actually, when my son was really ill, and which is not a win, but he has epilepsy meds that he has to have twice. He was able to tell me, because we're learning about yum yum, which is talking about what can you taste. He was saying, and I was saying, you've got taste buds and things like that in your mouth. He told me he wouldn't take his meds, and he was like, my taste buds have changed. And I was like, that's amazing. He's telling me that it tastes different. His medicine tastes different because he's unwell. Then he would not have been able to even advocate for that. We had to give him his meds, and unfortunately it was not the best time, but it was really good to open that conversation up about his taste buds changing. So it was really useful. We also have Be a Strong Sensory Advocate. So that talks about what we've just finished that course, and we've got another one starting in September, which is a live work through of sensory understanding, regulation, but then also the advocacy piece to school. So thinking about what are the rights that you have with Send Code of Practice, the equalities laws, all of those things, and then creating a document to actually fill out, to be like, this is my sensory needs, this is what regulates, this is a classroom adjustment that you can make, and this is the success indicator of actually, does that work? Does the classroom adjustment actually work? It may be about movement break, let's say, and then the success indicator is that actually you come back in the classroom, you're more regulated, because actually if you're not more regulated after it, then it's not working to support those sensory needs. So it's using my teacher background as well as Kate's occupational therapy background, combining, and also as a parent who's been fighting the system to get the support for my child, putting all of those things into place. So we have that as well as a digital membership where there's different strategies and resources to use.
I think one of the things I love that's come out of doing the course with my daughter is that her school have recognised that she needed breaks sometimes, and she didn't want to draw attention to herself in class, so they've created break cards, and she's designed them very much, I think, influenced by the supersensory penguins. Emily loves pandas a lot. So they now have what called panda cards at school. And they said that next year they're going to use them with the kids who need similar support. So
That's amazing.
So she's created these lovely designs.
I really want to see them.
I
Amazing.
haven't seen them yet myself. They're panda cards apparently, and if a kid needs a break, they just pop one of the panda cards up in the air and the teacher excuses them. It's really nice to see the impact that's having on a local school as well.
So
I'm
good.
I'm curious about whether or not you have any sort of tips for maybe like using outdoor time to support children to maybe express their feelings or maybe begin to understand any sort of specific sensory preferences or needs.
Yeah, definitely. Being out in nature is great. There's a lot of sensory exploration that you can do. My kids love being outside. In the summer holidays, when there's a lack of routine sometimes, I always try and make sure that we get up and dressed and out to a park or the woods or somewhere, because then the day just starts really well. They're less bickering when they're outside and is all, yeah, it just runs a lot smoother. For some kids, obviously, being outside won't necessarily be as regulating, but for my own ones, it is very much. And there's a lot you can do just for a walk through a woods. You can be like, what can you feel? What can you smell? What can you hear? We do actually have a little scavenger hunt, like a nature scavenger hunt thing in the Learning Lounge membership that people can print off and just explore using all of your senses. What can you push, pull, and carry as you're going through? And often it's logs. I'm going to pull the log. I'm being like Flex. Also, often, especially in some internal environments like the classroom, there's a lot of background noise. It's very intense. You're more, if you're tactile sensitive, being stuck in a smaller room with lots of people, it's tricky. So getting outside then is better because you have got that freedom to move. You've got less chance of being bumped into by lots of people. It's less crowded. So getting out into nature, into your routine in the summer holidays is going to be key. We've got a field nearby, so I'm just like, let them go like dogs, just to run and just throw a ball. All of those things will get that input if they seek that. And also by exploring sounds, sights, smells in nature is so good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things I love when my daughter's feeling like she just needs a little bit extra time before bed, other families might think we're absolutely nuts, but we'll go out for a walk.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
we've
mean,
done that with my
we live
daughter.
out in the countryside, so it's slightly different. We don't live in the inner city or anything
Yeah.
like that. So there's a little walk around the village and we look for bats or birds roosting in the trees and that kind of thing. And then we come back, and usually it's only 10 minutes. It's not
Yeah.
a long walk. And it helps to just center her and help her to relax and get into that headspace for bed. Because
Yeah.
that's one of her things, is that she just finds it really difficult to switch off. So getting to sleep is a real difficulty.
Yeah. And for a lot of kids actually who have sensory processing differences or are autistic or sleep, getting that sleep and getting to sleep is really tricky. Often it's counterintuitive to get them to, so going for a walk is perfect. And also, even if you've got cushions or jumping around on cushions, getting any vestibular or proprioceptive input before bed, it sounds like, oh no, we should be doing breathing things, we should be doing all that. But actually, for some kids, they need that rough and tumble just before you head up to do the bedtime routine, because that's regulating for them. So it depends on your own child, and best as a parent, because you see them and you can understand. So actually, if they're not getting to sleep, rather than being like, let's do some deep breaths, for some kids that is perfect and that works for them. But if it doesn't work for your child, actually go downstairs, get the cushions off the sofa and pile cushions on top of them, get them to jump off the sofa and jump onto the cushions, see if that works.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had pillow fights in the
Yeah.
past. I've noticed that what she needs changes sometimes. And also, she's got older, her preferences have evolved as well. Do you have any further tips for maybe calming, helping support children's sensory needs at home?
Yeah. So one good thing that I think the supersensory quad feeds into is trying to get the kids to go with things and build their intrinsic motivation, because a lot of kids, if we put extra demands on them to be like, you must do this exercise to regulate yourself, they're not going to do it. They don't want that demand. So it's thinking, my kid loves doing puzzles, let's say, like my kids don't, but say your kid likes puzzles and that's an activity that they intrinsically want to do. Think about how can you layer some extra sensory input into that activity. So build it around what they want to do. So for example, if you've got an exercise balls or gym balls are really good, especially for rhythmic movement. Rhythmic movement back and forth is really regulating. There's some movement that can be more alerting, which you need at certain times of the day. But yeah, the rocking back and forth, or even just lying on it, doing a puzzle. So lying on the floor over the ball, doing the puzzle, that gives that proprioceptive input, that muscle feedback, and a bit of vestibular. So it just builds extra sensory input for regulation into what they're already doing. So think about, what does my child enjoy doing? And likewise, if they like colouring and they're sitting at a table, but they find it tricky to sit at the table, get them to even just lie on their front and do it, because again, more of their body is touching the floor, so they're getting more of that muscle feedback. Or use the muscle bands on the chairs, just whatever they like to do, add in some extra sensory input and lead with them, because you don't want to add extra demands, especially if they're dysregulated already.
I'm curious to know about your SEND conference that you've got on later this year, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I'm super passionate about everyone creating environments that enable our kids to be able to thrive and support and feel supported and safe. And that includes in children's activities, so after school clubs, sports clubs, craft clubs, STEAM clubs, ensuring that we all get that understanding of how neurodivergent brains work, how sensory input impacts certain people, and all of those things. So I'm running a conference for children's activity providers and tutors, the Adapt and Include SEND conference. It's going to be great. We've got so many experts that are running workshops to talk about things like low demands, because we've got a PDA expert, we've got understanding the neurodivergent brain and how that then impacts your planning for your activity. We've also got Lou, who is visually impaired herself, so we've got an interactive workshop with different glasses and different things, like doing different tasks and just getting your head around, how is this actually going to be, this experience of my club going to be for certain kids who maybe have certain disabilities or are neurodivergent? And it's just really thinking, how can I be more inclusive? Thinking about how you present that in your marketing to parents, because as a parent of a child who's autistic, has epilepsy, I do not trust many people with my child. If people don't understand why Solomon is responding in certain ways or understand his seizures, then I can't trust them with my child. So it's coming from that parent perspective as well as the teaching perspective. How can I help children's activity providers and tutors to just think about it? Just think, how can I make these little adaptations? It doesn't need to be big, but how can I build that trust with parents of kids with special educational needs, disabilities, and how can I actually support these kids to feel safe and secure in my activity?
Curious, what's next for you and the Supersensory Squad and all your other businesses and all the other ideas you have? Where will you go next?
Yeah, the conference in November is a focus. And then from there, thinking about training for children's activity providers, for tutors. I would love to get into teacher training as well, to do that, to really make sure from the start that all teachers fully understand how the neurodivergent brain works and how to make adaptations in the classroom as well. I'd love to change the education system there. So that's a dream. But yeah, season 3 of the podcast is starting again in September. We've got the conference in November, and then we are in talks with some kind of corporate organizations to try and just ensure that sensory needs are understood and making the experience for families the best that it can be.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. I think what I love about what you're trying to do is that if you look through your business websites, you're covering everything really. You're covering parents, home educators, teachers, thinking about the wider community with all of the different resources you have. Is there any particular freebies that you think people should go and look at?
Yeah, we have one of, from the Understanding Sensory Processing Through Stories, we have one of the parent videos on Buzz, our tactile touch penguin. So we've got like that, just a 10-15 minute video there, which is so useful. People have watched that and been like, oh yeah, I want to know more about the other senses. A lot of kids may have that tactile sensitivity, like with clothes, with brushing hair, etc. So go and have a watch. That's free. We've also got some posters with the different penguin questions, so therefore you can introduce Echo says, what sounds can you hear? Just the basics of that as well on our website, which is www.thesupersensorysquad.com.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me, Nicole. It's been a pleasure, and good luck with Supersensory Squad.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Curious About Nature. If you would like to keep getting nature and outdoor learning stories and tips, hit subscribe in the podcast so you never miss an episode. Don't forget to give a 5-star rating and review to support our podcast reach. To deepen your child's connection with nature and natural world education, please check out the Nature Curious subscription box. Head over to the website buttercuplearning.com to further support your family's nature journey.